This month's SBE Webxtra is brought to you by Wheatstone, maker of the intelligent IP audio network used by studios around the globe. The AES-67 compatible WheatNet IP intelligent network is the most comprehensive end-to-end studio network system in the world, with a full line of consoles, software apps, IP audio appliances, and third-party add-ons for any studio workflow, size, or purpose. Wheatstone.
Good afternoon, good day. I'm Kirk Harnack, your host for this month's SBE Webxtra. It's the SBE meeting on the web. SBE is the Society of Broadcast Engineers, and it's a group of about 5,000 broadcast engineers and folks who are engineers for content creation facilities and so forth, who are interested in making broadcast better, maintaining what they've got, and improving the facilities and learning their craft and trade even better. That's what we do at the Society of Broadcast Engineers. And so we do this meeting on the web once a month, and this month we're going to be talking with a very interesting man who's taking over what seems like a pretty big responsibility. We'll introduce him in just a minute. I want to bring in well, he could be a co-host. He's our newsman for this edition, Chris Scherer. Hey, Chris, welcome in. How are you?
Hi, Kirk. Good to be here once again for another installment of the SBE Webxtra.
Glad you're here. And we're going to try a little thing that's different. You know, at the beginning of many SBE meetings, we have some announcements or some news of what's topical, what's going on, what SBE members really ought to be aware of right now. And so, Chris, you're going to catch us up on 2 or 3 stories right now. Let's do it.
Sure. A couple of things. For one, the SBE has again conducted an annual compensation survey. The results of that have been compiled and they are now available. Go to the SBE bookstore, sbe.org/bookstore will get you there. Non-members can purchase the report and members can download it for free as a member benefit. If you participated in the survey this year, we thank you very much for doing so. And if you did not, I hope you will when we conduct it again next spring. The more people who participate, the more accurate the results will be. We have a whole series of webinars by SBE on the calendar coming up, running through them kind of quickly here. One very soon, July 24th, is the ATSC 3.0 Networking Module 3 IP Routing. Wayne Pacina presents the final module of the series, which will cover IP routing, secure remote access, and security best practices to ensure reliable system operation and ongoing support capability. On August 22, we have 50 tips for the broadcast technical professional. Jeff Welton shares some of his acquired knowledge from his years of field work. He'll cover ideas in grounding, lightning protection, safety, IT security, and whatever else comes to mind. September 19 brings RF 201. That's a series. This will be Module 7 on FM filters and FM combiners. Tom Silliman and Nicholas Paulin of ERI will cover the ins and outs of FM filters and combiners, design aspects, the types of filters available, commonly used technologies for emissions control and channel combining for shared antenna systems, and custom filter solutions will be covered. September 25 brings us part 1 of a new series called Fundamentals of SNMP. The Simple Network Management Protocol was created as a means to monitor and control devices in an IP network. This webinar series begins by providing a familiarity with SNMP fundamentals, beginning with consideration to a network management system, architecture, and system components. Then we look ahead way in the future. By comparison, October 23rd, RF 201 Module 8, AM multiplexed AM antenna systems. Tom King of Kintronics Labs presents this webinar. It'll cover the feasibility criteria for multiplexing 2 or more AM stations, basic isolation, filter designs, and tower feed methods for improved audio bandwidth of multiplexed AM stations, omnidirectional AM multiplexed design approach, and directional AM multiplex design approach, plus more. All webinars by SBE cost $59 for members. They are $89 for non-members, but if you hold SBE Member Plus, all webinars by SBE are included for free. Go to sbe.org/webinars for details and to register. You can watch the webinars live on the dates I mentioned or watch them later on demand. And finally, a couple of certification dates. If you'd like to take an SBE certification exam, here are some dates that you should note on your calendars. The chapter exams in August will be held from August 2 to 12. The application deadline for that has already passed. So if you've applied, you should be notified soon about the arrangements. If you're going to the AES convention in New York in October, you can take an exam there. Register by September 10. And the Chapter November exams will be held November 1 to 11. The application deadline for that is September 24. More information on SBE certification, go to sbe.org/certification. And that's what I have.
Chris, that's awesome. I love the format. Very good. I feel really up to date now. So thanks for putting those together in a format that works well on our webinar. I think I know
Great.
what I'm doing on 5 different dates coming up over the next few months. Attending some webinars. These are all interesting. Every one of them I can apply to me. So yeah,
good.
Maybe you too. So thanks. All right. We're going to get into now our topic for today and our story for today and our guest for today. Our guest is RJ Russell. RJ Russell, he's the president of Technical Broadcast Solutions, or TBSI. And first of all, I want to thank Chris for arranging for RJ to be on the show today and taking care of the details. Really helped a lot. And now let's bring him in. RJ Russell, good afternoon. How are you?
Good, Kirk. How about yourself?
I'm awesome. And so glad to be able to sit and chat with you for however long it takes. If it's a half hour, 45 minutes, an hour, we'll do it. There's a really interesting story about why you are our guest on the show. And in these board meetings that I'm in, because I'm on the board of directors, it's been a story, a saga. Every 6 months we get together for a board meeting, and we hear about the progress toward this very interesting goal to solve a very interesting problem. Maybe first of all, RJ, you can outline what the problem is and how the problem came to be.
Certainly, Kirk. So as we're all familiar with, the wireless industry has been expanding and looking for additional spectrum. And a couple of years ago, as part of the AWS-3 transition, part of the 1.7 and 1.8 gigahertz spectrum that has been available to the Department of Defense for their use was transitioned over to the wireless industry, which created a need for the Department of Defense to move to another band. What NTIA and the FCC ended up doing was assigning them to be co-primary in the 2 gigahertz band that we are all familiar with for E and G in broadcast auxiliary spectrum, 2025 to 2110 megahertz. They are, as I noted, they're co-primary. So if we want to think about this from that standpoint, broadcasters are user A and the DoD is user B. While they are here to share, they also can't impede the broadcasters. As you mentioned, one of the challenges the SBE has been looking at over the last couple of years is how do we integrate them and what's the best way to move forward with that.
Wow. So this is kind of interesting. I really hadn't thought about or heard of this idea of co-primary users. I think in many cases in broadcast, we're used to a primary service and a secondary service, like, for example, an FM translator. If somebody is able to rearrange their main FM signal as a primary service, and that requires an FM translator that's already licensed to go off the air or move, well, that can be forced. So you described briefly what co-primary means, but you also said is a little bit of a hierarchy there with an A and a B user. Can you help me understand that a little bit more on a practical basis?
Yeah. So as user B, they have to, they cannot impact our operations. In other words, the broadcasters still have first right in that spectrum. They can't impede our current or future use of the spectrum. So as new technologies are developed for us to use in that spectrum, whatever they're doing can't impede on those either.
Okay. All right. So we've got this
and to make sure that that's just real quickly. So to make sure that that's clear and defined, the SBE, the NAB, the National Association of Broadcasters, and the Department of Defense are holding regular meetings to develop a memorandum of understanding, an MOU, that will define these uses.
Okay. So you mentioned the NAB. Let's get into how the SBE fits into this.
So since frequency coordination of the spectrum has always been in the realm of the SBE, SBE is going to continue in that realm. The The difference is that we're transitioning from an intra-service coordination effort where it's been coordination among broadcasters to an inter-service coordination where it's now coordination between broadcasters and the Department of Defense, and how we develop that program, how we allow them access to the spectrum while ensuring that we can continue to do the job that we need to do.
Now, it sounds like the easy position for broadcasters to take is no, we need all the spectrum all the time. No. What was the pressure toward broadcasters that make that not a proper answer?
It really boils down to the need to share the spectrum, right? Mm-hmm. We all know that we've all seen the number of spectrum auctions that have come along throughout our careers in this industry, and quite honestly, this is another piece of spectrum that could be developed for auction at some point down the road. But by sharing it, by having both broadcasters and the Department of Defense in there, the likelihood of that is diminished tremendously. So that's part of the reason that this is actually very beneficial to the broadcasters, because it gives us another very strong partner in this spectrum to ensure that we have continued access to it going forward.
So if there's just one user of a piece of spectrum, it's possible, and maybe even more likely, that the FCC will say, you've been using this for free, you're going to need to pay for it now, we're going to auction this off. But if there's two users and one of them is the U.S. government Department of Defense, that seems to shore up the security of that piece of spectrum.
It certainly would seem that would definitely be beneficial to us.
So what does what does the Department of Defense want to do with this spectrum from time to time that would require this coordination?
So essentially there's 4 systems that the Department of Defense is looking at transitioning into the spectrum. The first is the easiest, and we've actually already started in certain markets, and this is what the Department of Defense refers to as TRR, Tactical Radio Relay. This is ground to ground, short field deployable antennas. There are 2 different systems. The Army uses one, the Navy uses another. And as I said, very simple, very, limited range, ground to ground, easy to mix in with what the broadcasters want to do. The second system, which is going to take a little bit more effort, a little bit more training and development into how we integrate this, is SUAs, small unmanned aerial systems, vehicles, drones. These are all hand-launched drones, so very similar to what we're already using as broadcasters, as the latest tool in our own ENG, news gathering, production, everything else. These are very similar in size, very similar in purpose. The next system, and each one of these systems gets a little bit more complex, gets a little bit harder to how we integrate this and how we make it work, is TTNT. TTNT is Tactical Targeting Network Technology. And then the last one is HRV, High Resolution Video. We don't have a lot of specifics on those 2 systems yet, as we're still developing these. But part of the MOU, part of the Memorandum of Understanding that I referenced earlier, is going to define what these systems are and their operational characteristics, so that the broadcasters and the frequency coordinators will have access to know what else is in the band with them.
Doesn't the DoD have spectrum already that's useful for these things? I guess why do they need additional spectrum on top of what they have to do these things?
Because of what they lost at 1.7 and 1.8.
Oh,
so a lot of this stuff was in the what's being transitioned as part of AWS-3.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. Hey, I'm sorry. Go ahead, RJ.
No, go ahead.
Just want to mention, if you've just tuned in, we're talking to RJ Russell. He is the president of Technical Broadcast Solutions, and RJ's company, he's going to tell us about this in a minute, about how he and his company are working with SBE, or working with the Department of Defense through the SBE to do this coordination. But we're just finding out about the spectrum and some of the uses that the DoD has for the spectrum. RJ, is there a chance that the DoD would say, we really like the spectrum, and you know what, we need it all? You guys are going to have to find some other place. Is that possible?
No. What we've found in the discussions we've had is they have been tremendous. They understand our needs. They understand our use of the spectrum. They want to learn more about our use of the spectrum. They're not just blindly coming in and going, okay, well, cough it up. They're not doing that at all. They understand that the willingness to share, the willingness to cooperate and come up with, the use of the spectrum that's efficient for both parties.
Would it occurs to me that would 5G and the rollout of 5G and the availability to more and more people, private and commercial entities, of really fast wireless 5G technology, would that ever be the impetus for the DoD to say, you guys have a great other option, it's 5G, and so we do need the spectrum after all? Do you think that'll change the landscape?
I don't think so. We're the primary user. We are the primary user of this spectrum. They understand that. The FCC understands that. NTIA understands that. I think what we will see is that we may see some encouragement and possibly some development along the way of more efficient use of the spectrum than we use it currently. Whether
Gotcha.
whether that's LTE, whether that's time domain, whatever the case may be, but there's definitely more efficient ways to use the spectrum than way we've used it traditionally in the broadcast industry.
Well, necessity's the mother of invention, absolutely. So, RJ, tell me about how this relationship got started. The DoD came knocking and on what, the SBE's door first? Is that how it happened? And expecting some assistance in coordinating with the SBE's help?
Yes, it's exactly it. When NTIA and FCC decided that this was the way to go, they put the parties in touch with each other, and we've been developing this transition plan, this memorandum of understanding, and developing some ideas and some goals and some projects to make this feasible.
Gotcha. Okay. Then the SBE rose to the challenge and said, yeah, we think we can put together the facilities to help this frequency coordination happen. And then what was the chatter at the SBE? What was the SBE's either plan, or what did they end up doing, and how did you become involved with that?
Certainly. So in my role as the Frequency Committee Chair, I sat in a lot of these meetings, and as also a member of the board, we kind of decided that if we were going to be serious about this frequency coordination, that we needed some financial assistance, and the DoD agreed, and we developed a plan to put in place some national frequency coordination programs, and essentially create a single point of contact for the Department of Defense for their coordination requests. Especially as we look across the country at the number of volunteer coordinators we have, and the DoD not necessarily knowing exactly which ones they need to talk to at any particular time, we felt it was important that we take some control at the national level. Maybe control is not the right word, but just some process to make this easy for the DoD and easy for the broadcasters. And as part of that, the SBE decided that they, rather than having a full-time employee do this, they wanted to use a contract firm, and my firm was the one that was chosen. And so Technical Broadcast will be acting as the National Frequency Coordination Manager moving forward to assist local coordinators and the DoD in access to the spectrum.
Okay. I've got questions about how that's going to work, how that might affect, for example, I live in Nashville, Tennessee. We have an SBE frequency coordinator here. He's pretty much volunteer, I suppose. And I want to hear about that. Hey, you are listening or watching to the SBE WEBxtra, our monthly SBE meeting here on the web, and we're glad you've tuned in. Please tell your friends about it, bookmark the page, or set it in your calendar. We typically do this on a Monday, typically, I guess about the third Monday, typically in any given month. That subject changed a little bit, but if you just watch your Facebook or your email, or Twitter feed, we'll let you know about when that is. I'm Kirk Harnack, along with Chris Scherer today. He's in the background, and today Chris gave us an update on some news items. We're going to continue with RJ Russell here in just a minute. I want to mention that we now have a sponsor for the SBE WEBxtra, and it's Wheatstone. We'll be right back. Hang on.
Hello, I'm Jay Tower of the Wheatstone, and today we're going to discuss basic planning for your modern AOIP control systems. Many people are still making the transition from analog to digital. And just because you have a pile of equipment and the current number of the faders in your control studio, doesn't mean you need to migrate that to your AOIP system. Some of the first things you want to do is take an inventory of all your analog, digital, microphone sources, and where those sources live. Next, you're going to want to come up with a system topology where we're going to deploy switches. You may have a centralized application where we put everything in the rack room, or you may want to use edge switches. Additionally, we're going to think about cabling and infrastructure. Please get with one of your manufacturers and ask for AOIP planning guides so you can plan your next AOIP audio control system. This is Jay Tyler. Until next time.
And thanks a lot to Wheatstone for sponsoring the SBE WEBxtra. All right, Kirk Harnack, Chris Scherer along, and RJ Russell's our guest. RJ is the president of Technical Broadcast Solutions, TBSI. And I've known RJ for quite a long time on the SBE board of directors, but I haven't had a chance to deal with RJ out of much of any other sense, although it turns out we seem to know a lot of the same people. So that's kind of cool, maybe indicative of how small our business really is. RJ, let's move on to local frequency coordinators. How do they fit into the plan? You know, a lot of cities, I guess a lot of chapters have a frequency coordinator, mostly volunteer. I understand there has been some payment now and then for the NFL game day frequency coordination, things like that. Talk to me about that job and how this new program with your company, TBSI, and the SBE, how does all that dovetail together?
So part of the contract with the DoD is, to try to get volunteer coordinators in every market. We do have some currently that we don't have coordinators in. So that'll be part of TBSI's Technical Broadcast Solutions. Scope is working with the local coordinators to fill the gaps. We will also be the ones to assist the local coordinators. We do understand that they're volunteers. We understand that this is a whole new realm of coordination efforts that they've not necessarily had to work with in the past, and we're going to be there to assist them and help them in any way we can. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a minute.
That's right. when it comes to a DoD request, I mean, is the DoD going to say? Oh, I should ask. When the DoD requests for use of a frequency for some period of time, wouldn't that tend to occur somewhere where there's already an existing military base or military practice area, field of operation? Wouldn't that be the case, or might they just come in and want to practice somewhere not in a military base?
Well, you got to think, yes. I mean, the primary use is going to be around military installations. Some of the markets that have already been coordinated are Fort Huachuca outside of Tucson, Arizona, Yuma Marine Corps Air Station, Yuma, and the Yuma Proving Ground in Yuma, Arizona, Cherry Point, Marine Corps Air Station, Cherry Point. The entire state of Hawaii has already been coordinated. And what we've done is, traditionally in the 2 gigahertz band, we have home channel plans. The broadcasters have specific channels in that spectrum that they use every day for their ENG shots, whether it's a helicopter, whether it's a van, whether it's camera backs. And the first step in this is in those high priority markets that are definitely a little bit more remote, is going to be working with the local coordinators to develop a new channel plan, if possible, to make room for them. And essentially give the Department of Defense their own home channel so that they can operate autonomously just like a broadcaster would in the band without having to worry about interfering with each other.
Okay.
Now part of that, part of their coordination request does include stop buzzer contact information, just like, in the broadcast market, we all know how to get a hold of each other as chief engineers in a market to, if one station steps on another, we're going to have the same processes in place with the Department of Defense.
So what I heard you say is where there's a channel available, you called it a home channel, that could go ahead and get assigned to the DoD for their uses. Would they need to contemporaneously coordinate that still, or would they just be free to use that channel as needed?
We're still working on the definitions for that, Kirk. We do believe that there should be an expiration date on those coordinations and that they would have to be renewed. But even in those markets where we've got the pre-coordinated access already done, there is a process that we're still working on and defining that we are calling the notification process, which essentially means that the DoD is going to notify the broadcasters that, hey, our intent is we have a training exercise going on for the next week. We're going to go ahead and use that spectrum for the next week. Let us know if you see a problem. Because they also understand that there are instances where we have major breaking news, something going on, and we may need to use the entire spectrum. And their only request is, if they've got millions or billions of dollars tied up in a training exercise, that we're not shutting down their training exercise at the same time. So it's this shared responsibility, the shared spirit of cooperation that they understand. Breaking news happens. The only thing they're asking is that we make sure we understand what their use of the spectrum is. Now, going back to what you asked originally about military bases, here's the thing. Every city really has National Guard armories.
Oh, yeah.
So essentially, we are talking about more than just military installations. We are talking about essentially every market in the country.
That makes sense. Yeah, got a National Guard armory 2 miles by air from where I sit right here, and Tennessee Air National Guard at the airport. Huge hangar there. Wow. Okay, so hey, I'm going to ask you a question that you may not know the answer to, and of course, if you're in the military, you're listening, watching, you probably know this just fine, but in an actual field of operation, theater of operation, where there's action going on, and this would not be probably within the U.S. borders, but outside. Is there any frequency coordination for that, or do our militaries just do what they need to do to get the job done?
They're just going to do what they need to get done.
Okay, I thought so, but I had to ask. I'm not. I don't have a military background myself. Wow. So what's the broadcaster's proceed? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, earlier I referred to the two tactical radio relay systems, and that one belongs to the Army, one belongs to the Navy. Well, the Navy system actually belongs to my beloved Marine Corps. So,
okay,
I do have a little bit of inside information on stuff.
Okay. Let's see. My other question was going to be, So let's say you're in a market and you're a broadcaster, and this has been coordinated, and yet something that a link that you were depending on stops working. You feel like, whoa, I'm getting interference here. Never had this before. What's the broadcaster's procedure at that moment to get it cleared up?
The broadcasters will be given phone numbers and contact information that are manned 24/7, 365.
Oh, wow. Okay. And then from that point of contact, I guess there's a link to the Department of Defense.
Well, that's
your company would have. Yeah.
Well, that contact phone number, that stop buzzer contact, would actually be at the Department of Defense personnel. They
Oh,
would
okay.
be the person that would be responsible on the ground for the use of that spectrum. So let's say we're talking about, like you're talking about in your backyard, you all of a sudden see interference that you've not seen before, and you're not sure who's generating it. You can call this number. Somebody will answer that phone, and they will let you know whether or not they're operating or not.
I can see it now. So one of the uses you mentioned was HRV, high resolution video. I can see it now. Hey, you're interfering with us, but this is pretty good video. Can we use this on the 6 o'clock news? Hey, Chris Scherer has a great question. He's passed on to me, so I'm going to give him credit and ask you, what record keeping do you suggest stations keep if they need to coordinate? What kind of binder or email or file should they have on hand?
Almost every broadcaster that I'm aware of, has at their ENG control point the list of names and numbers of the other stations in the market. And this would just be an additional line on that spreadsheet. If this is the person that we contact, this is where they should be operating, so much the same as what they're already used to doing.
So thinking about frequency coordinators in each market, what should they be doing now? Need to contact you? Wait to hear from you?
Either way, Kirk. Either way, Kirk, if they want to reach out to me, they are more than welcome to. My information is on the SBE website, I believe. It has been for years as I've been a member of the board and an officer. The easiest way to reach me is RJ Russell at SBE.org. But I will be, in the next month, reaching out to every coordinator we currently have on record to verify that we have current information. And just making sure that we're looking to fill the gaps.
I guess just in terms of a hierarchy of content, should frequency coordinators and broadcasters consider their point of contact to be the SBE, or you via the SBE, or you via TBSI? So what should they be thinking of as, that's who I need to be in touch with?
Absolutely, they can absolutely be, use me. That's the point, right? The whole idea behind this National Frequency Coordination Manager was try to come up with a single point of contact, somebody that can funnel the information to the right entity, whether it's from the broadcaster to the DoD or from the DoD to the broadcaster. This is critical for the DoD because there are markets where we don't have a frequency coordinator right now. Hawaii was one. The frequency coordinator in Hawaii retired. We haven't found a replacement for them. So TBSI or myself contacted all the broadcasters in Hawaii, all the licensees. This includes not just your typical TV stations, but there's still cable access. Cars band is still in this. There's still LTTS licensees, nationwide licensees that come in on ad hoc events like big sporting events, things like that, that are part of that. Cherry Point, coastal North Carolina was very much the same way. We didn't have a coordinator there. So we worked with each broadcaster to develop a plan and then got the local broadcasters to sign off on that plan.
Will you be in touch with every single broadcaster or every single frequency coordinator? I'm a broadcaster. I think maybe I know my frequency coordinator. I met him at the SBE party in Nashville. What should I expect to hear, or how can I get some contact info or that super duper phone number?
Ideally, it will be through your local coordinator.
Okay.
That's the way we would like to continue to communicate. And then in those markets where we don't have a local coordinator, then, SBE National, TBSI would be the contact.
Chris Scherer, you've been quiet in the background, taking notes, I'm sure. Have you got any follow-up questions that I haven't asked to ask yet?
Well, not necessarily a question, but I was just going to add that information about the SBE frequency coordination effort can be found by going to sbe.org/FC. There's a quick screen grab of it as well, at least to get you started on the start page of some information there. Looks like I should probably add a little more to that about the DoD coordination effort as well. So there's a direct line. So that'll be added in the next day or so. But yeah, if you just need to get there quickly, sbe.org/FC, and you'll find your way there.
Cool. We will put that link as well, some of the others that you gave during our topical news on the show notes for this show. And that means you can go to YouTube. SBE has a channel on YouTube. It's called SBE National. And if you go there, you can find these videos every month. And every video, of course, has some notes under it, and we'll put this information in the show notes. RJ, let me ask you: is there anything that you think we've skipped over, or that you want to make sure broadcast engineers know about?
The one thing I would definitely say is, how cooperative and how willing to work with us the Department of Defense has been and continues to be. They've sponsored a lot of field tests, a lot of lab testing to really see how this equipment works together, to the point that they've actually bought their own broadcast systems and installed in their labs for testing. As we work through this, those test results will be made available at some point in the future for everybody to review and understand how this stuff works. In addition to that, they're also working to develop tools that will make sharing this spectrum a lot easier, whether that is some type of automatic field sensing type of system, or whether it's just a really accurate database. We work on the database every couple of weeks, where we check the FCC database. We compare it to what the SBE local coordinators have provided. We check for license updates. All of that it goes into this, and it's being developed into a great Google Earth KML file that shows fantastic, shows received sites that with their operational area, if that information is included in their license. And we're also working to develop a frequency coordination request tool that will make it very simple and very easy for not just DoD, but broadcasters and these nationwide LTTS licensees to be able to request a frequency for any particular event and get accurate and updated information for what's going on in that particular area.
All right. During our pre-show, during our notes about this, there was some mention made of some kind of testing.
Yes.
Chris, what was the name of that testing?
Dave's not here, man. Oh, that's the inside joke until we reveal the name of the testing, which is hemp.
Hemp testing. Hemp testing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
RJ, I got to ask you to tell us about what is hemp testing. And actually, I'm getting the munchies here. Go ahead, RJ.
Absolutely, yeah. So hemp testing has actually been going on across the country for years. Probably unbeknownst to broadcasters most of the time, but due to some changes within the FCC. The FCC is now requiring that SBE provide a coordination sign-off for these tests. And what hemp testing is it's a little misconceiving in the name. It's high altitude electromagnetic pulse testing. It's really not conducted at a high altitude, but it's meant to simulate that. So essentially, they are testing their buildings and their facilities to be able to withstand an electromagnetic pulse. These tests typically go from DC all the way up to 1 gig or even higher. So as you can imagine, that affects the broadcasters, not necessarily so much in the BAS bands, although some of them do fall in that, but our actual over-the-air broadcast bands,
Sure.
the actual FM and AM bands, the TV bands. But again, so what we're working with is we're working with them to try to develop a standardized test and some standardized language to allow them to do these tests with a blanket coordination across the country, by limiting the power levels, limiting the dwell time on a frequency, requesting that they skip specific frequencies of broadcasters that are within a certain range of that facility. Just anything we can to make it easier for both us and both the broadcasters and the Department of Defense in being able to conduct these tests, because these are mandated tests that they have to complete.
Wow. Well, as long as they're of short duration, it doesn't seem much of a problem. Hey, what was that click on the radio? I don't know. It's gone now. But if they sit there and sit on it for an hour, that could be a problem.
Exactly. So, and that's and that's the other part, right? Is that, the other part we want to work with them on is understanding that while we understand there's a lot of restrictions in what data they can provide us on these tests, at least giving us some broad understanding of what's going on with these tests and an idea of when they're happening, so that we can notify broadcasters in the area that, oh, if you see something at this particular time or day, or you get phone calls at this particular time or day, whatever, that's what's going on. It's come and gone. Like you said, it was a click, right?
Do you think there's any danger to sensitive receive gear like my STL receivers on a tower listening at 950 megahertz or TV broadcasters? You said the frequencies of these pulses were lower, but so shouldn't short out any receiver preamps.
Right, exactly that, and again, it's not that they're not just putting a beacon in the middle of the facility, shooting this out to a wide area. It's a directional, typically log periodic antenna aimed right at the building that they want to do. They're doing everything to focus the test on the facility they're trying to test.
Wow. Big stuff. Amazing. We think we have it complicated in broadcast. It seems like it. Man. I'm glad they're doing it, and testing's important. That's cool. That's cool. RJ, thank you so much for being with us. Any final wrap up here before we need to go?
No, just if you're a coordinator, feel free to reach out to me, or I'll be reaching out to you in the very near future. Thank you for taking the time to talk about this, Kirk and Chris. This is probably one of the biggest things the SBE's had going on in a while, and we really look forward to making it successful.
Well, I'm glad you're on top of it. I don't think we could have had a better person step up to the plate to offer to take over the job. So thank you, RJ, very much. Appreciate you and your company.
Thank you very much, Kirk.
And Chris, you've got that webpage, sbe.org/FC, and you'll be populating that a bit more. So that'll be very useful to frequency coordinators.
Yep, we'll take care of that. And once again, glad everybody could join us today for this installment of the SBE Webxtra. As you mentioned, Kirk, we do these once a month, and the third Monday is kind of our target, but that may float a little bit. So we hope you'll join us for the next one.
All right, we're gonna be done with this one. Chris has a final announcement, and we will see you next week. Please be sure and tell your friends, tell your SBE chapters about these, because hey, there's no reason why you can't go to your local SBE chapter meeting and also attend this webinar. You can also you don't have to watch it live. You can get it on our YouTube channel at SBE National. That's the YouTube channel for the Society of Broadcast Engineers for these events. Chris, I'll let you take it out.
Yeah, and actually, if you can't find it as quickly, go to sbe.org/YouTube, and you'll be redirected to our YouTube channel as well. By the way, since you attended today's, or if you watch this SBE Webxtra, and you're SBE certified, you just earned a half point for your recertification credits. So make note of that when you go to recertify when your certification comes due. If you have some ideas for an upcoming SBE Webxtra, I'd love to hear from you. You can send those ideas to me at comms@sbe.org. That email will come straight to my desk, and I'll reply and see what we can do to make that happen. And finally, I'll just say that today's Webxtra and the next few coming forward are sponsored through the generous support of Wheatstone, and we certainly appreciate them sponsoring the SBE Webxtra. So until next time, on behalf of Kirk Harnack, and we thank RJ Russell as our guest, I'm Chris Scherer from the Society of Broadcast Engineers. See you next time.